Chum, there's just so many exciting cultural heritages to experience.
These are for intermediate level tourists who have already visited Korea and its famous attractions. You might even be standing in a World Heritage Site right now.
How about searching for intangible cultural heritage that you can experience? 한소리, 제주 해녀 diving, 김장. Make some unforgettable memories while having fun.
Last but not least, the advanced level. It's the memory of the World Register. Korea possesses an extensive documentary heritage. Korea is serious about documentation and preservation.
A tour of Korean cultural heritage will become a legacy of your own.
Why not make your own Korean cultural heritage travel itinerary?
Isn't it fascinating?
The Korean wave is drawing more fans from all over the world. Local consumer prices continue to hover at the 2% since rate in April. Turning to robots to allow the visually impaired the chance to better indulge in cultural experiences. Like the number of hybrid cars are registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million with this locally developed Yuri rocket.
Arirang.
Introducing Korean broadcast content that you won't be able to stop watching. For weary modern souls, Dr. Romantic, the quirky genius doctor of Puldam Hospital, prescribes heartwarming tales of humanity. A couple together for 7 years sees their rose-tinted glasses shatter. Can they keep their relationship alive? Discover the raw stories of youth, work, and love. Beyond what social media can show, experience the vibrant Korea through its hidden gems. Mama, the ultimate K-pop festival for global fans. Find your star in a feast of trendy music and electrifying performances. Now, the whole world enjoys it together.
The United States and Iran are scheduled to sign a peace deal later this week, but disputes appear to remain over several key issues, including transit fees through the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. President Donald Trump projected confidence about the agreement as he met with world leaders in France at the G7 summit. Oil prices plunged to a 3-month low amid hopes that the U.S.-Iran peace deal could end the energy supply crisis. Stock markets on Wall Street also rallied, with the Dow rising by about 1% at market close to hit a record high. President Lee Jae-myung met with Pope Leo for the first time at the Vatican and invited the Pope to Seoul for a major Catholic camp event in 2027. During their closed-door meeting, he is also believed to have asked the pontiff to visit North Korea. Hello and thanks for joining us on Arirang News. We begin today with the latest on the peace deal between the United States and Iran. Details of the MOU that's going to be signed on Friday have not yet been released, but both sides are already showing some splits over some details. Our Kim Bo-kyung starts us off.
U.S. President Donald Trump has said a preliminary deal to end the war with Iran has already been signed and suggested that the details of the agreement are set to be published pretty soon. Such remarks came while he was speaking on Monday alongside French President Emmanuel Macron ahead of this week's G7 meeting in France.
I'm very happy to say it's signed, the deal's all signed. This is a very powerful document, and I want it to be released, so probably pretty soon. I would say sometime after Friday.
Though Trump says the agreement has been reached, differences between the two sides are already emerging. One point both sides agree on is that once the MOU is signed, the Strait of Hormuz will reopen and the U.S. blockade will be lifted. The key question is whether commercial vessels will once again be able to pass through the Strait of Hormuz freely without paying additional fees. While Trump said there would be no transit fees, Iran's semi-official Fars news agency reported that Iran's right to collect transit fees in the Strait of Hormuz had been recognized. Another differing point, even within the U.S., is when the strait will be fully reopened. Trump said it will open on Friday.
When it's signed, the deal's all signed, and the strait is already partially opened, as you know, but it's essentially ships are starting to go out now. On Friday, it'll be completely opened.
A senior U.S. official, however, reportedly said in a briefing that though maritime traffic would increase substantially, a return to normal operations within 2 weeks is unlikely. The U.S. and Iran also seem to have some differences regarding the release of frozen Iranian assets. While Iran maintains that some of its frozen assets should be released immediately upon the signing of the MOU, the U.S. has made it clear that it cannot release frozen assets simply upon the signing, as any release of frozen assets and sanctions relief must be linked to the scope and implementation of Iran's nuclear disarmament commitments. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy said Monday that he had invited Russian President Vladimir Putin to discuss ending the war either at the G7 summit in France or in the United States. Zelenskyy said that a proposal for Putin to meet at the G7 summit had been submitted to the leaders of the U.S., France, and Russia, but there had been no clear answer from Moscow. Later on the same day, Zelenskyy said he had spoken to U.S. President Donald Trump and suggested holding a meeting in the U.S. in a format that would make it difficult for Putin to reject. He also said that the international community should increase pressure on Russia if Putin refuses to attend talks. Earlier in June, Putin said he saw no need to meet with Zelenskyy. Meanwhile, global markets surged and oil prices plunged on Monday after the United States and Iran reached a deal to extend their ceasefire and reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Investors cheered the prospect of easing Middle East tensions, sending major U.S. stock indexes higher for a third straight session, while crude prices fell to a 3-month low. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
Global markets rallied on Monday, and oil prices fell sharply after the United States and Iran reached an agreement to extend their ceasefire and reopen the Strait of Hormuz, a critical route for global oil shipments. Investors welcomed the development as a sign that tensions in the Middle East may be easing, raising hopes for greater stability in energy markets and lower inflation pressures worldwide. On Monday, all 3 major U.S. stock indexes advanced for a third straight session. The S&P 500 climbed 1.7%, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 468 points, or 0.9%. The Nasdaq Composite jumped 3.1%, led by strong gains in semiconductor shares. The Philadelphia Semiconductor Index also continued to hit record highs, as investors poured into chip makers on optimism surrounding artificial intelligence and improving geopolitical conditions. Oil prices moved in the opposite direction. Crude futures fell more than 4% on Monday as traders responded to the ceasefire agreement and the prospect of uninterrupted oil flows through the Strait of Hormuz. Brent crude for August delivery settled at $83.20 a barrel, down 4.9% from the previous session. Meanwhile, West Texas Intermediate crude for July delivery closed at $80.75 a barrel, a decline of 4.8%. Both benchmarks recorded their lowest closing levels since March, when tensions involving Iran first began escalating. The market reaction followed reports that U.S. President Donald Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, and Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf had electronically signed a memorandum of understanding, formally endorsing the ceasefire. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The reopening of the Strait of Hormuz may have been announced, but the effects of the conflict between the U.S. and Iran on global energy markets are far from over. Our correspondent Park Gun-woo spoke with a senior official at the International Energy Agency about the road ahead and its implications for South Korea.
The normalization of global energy markets could still take many months. That's according to Tim Gould, Chief Energy Economist at the International Energy Agency, speaking following the declaration of an end to hostilities between the U.S. and Iran.
If you just look at the sailing times from the Middle East to markets around the world, I mean, to get to Korea takes the best part of 3 or 4 weeks. So in our view, it will take many, many months to get back to somewhere close to where we were prior to the conflict.
Gould also warned that energy markets may never fully return to their pre-conflict state.
And in some ways, we may never get back to the situation that we had in February, because there is also the question of confidence in the strait, and that confidence is now quite fragile. So people will have in their mind that the strait has been closed once, perhaps it will close again.
That comes as fuel importing countries are likely to reassess their energy security strategies following months of disruptions to global oil and gas flows. So South Korea relies heavily on energy imports. So what lessons do you think South Korea can earn from the recent crisis?
First golden rule of energy security, and that is diversification. Diversification of routes, diversification of suppliers, diversification of the energy mix, because wherever we see high levels of concentration in the energy system, that comes with some risks.
Gould said the crisis could accelerate investment in renewable and nuclear energy, while also speeding up the shift toward what he calls the age of electricity.
If you are using electricity, domestically produced electricity, that displaces then your need for oil imports. Korea is very well placed in some of those areas because it does have, a very well-developed ecosystem for example, for battery production, for all sorts of areas of technology development.
The IEA Economist also highlighted Korea's role as a key partner in future energy security discussions.
As we move on from this crisis, there will be a lot of discussions about how countries can safeguard their energy security interests in this new environment that we are in. And we are looking to Korea as a leader in some of those initiatives.
He added that the Middle East conflict could reshape how countries view energy security and energy transitions, saying the world is entering a new era of energy discussions. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News, Paris.
Korea's export prices rose for an 11th straight month in May, driven by strong global demand for memory chips and non-ferrous metals, linked to growing investment in artificial intelligence. According to the Bank of Korea on Tuesday, the export price index climbed 0.3% from April to 188.58. While the monthly increase slowed, export prices were nearly 47% higher than a year earlier. Meanwhile, import prices fell 0.3% for a second consecutive month, as lower international oil prices reduced the cost of imported mining products, coal, and petroleum goods. President Lee Jae-myung, who's on a 10-day trip to Europe, has met Pope Leo XIV for the first time. He invited the Pope to Seoul for a major Catholic camp event in 2027 and discussed regional peace with the spiritual leader. Our Yoon Jang-min is traveling with the president and reports from Rome.
The South Korean first couple was given a warm welcome at the Vatican. In their first meeting on Monday, a one-on-one that lasted for about half an hour, President Lee Jae-myung invited Pope Leo XIV to South Korea for World Youth Day Seoul 2027.
The leaders agreed to closely cooperate for the success of World Youth Day Seoul 2027. President Lee politely invited Leo XIV to visit South Korea on the occasion.
Regional peace was a key topic between the president and the spiritual leader.
The president explained to the Pope our people's desire and government's vision for peace on the Korean peninsula, and they reaffirmed the Vatican's unwavering support for peace and reconciliation on the peninsula.
Details were undisclosed, but it seems as though President Lee also might have asked the Pope to pay a visit to North Korea. When meeting Cardinal Lazaro Yuhung-sik last year, Lee said he hoped the Pope could stop by North Korea during his trip to Seoul. Meeting the press corps, the cardinal said whether the visit actually happens or not depends on the North regime.
I think it depends on the North. It's the one that has to invite the Pope and create conditions.
A senior Blue House official said President Lee vowed to continue working to improve inter-Korean ties while acknowledging that it may take time and patience. Lee reportedly cited a line from the Bible, "Knock at the door and it will be opened." The Holy See stressed the importance of hope. The Korean leader presented the Pope with a sculpture representing God's embrace, referring to the prodigal son from the Gospel, and the Pope gifted the president with a message for the 59th World Day of Peace. Concluding his visit to the Vatican, President Lee will head to France to attend the G7 summit, where world leaders are set to address a host of global challenges. Yoon Jang-min, Arirang News, Rome.
In meeting the Korean community in Italy, President Lee Jae-myung has promised to improve the overseas voting system as quickly as possible. He said he takes it very seriously that some overseas Koreans could not exercise their voting rights due to certain administrative issues. The president also promised a better system for Korean nationals adopted overseas when they try to find their origins or families to ensure that they stay connected to their motherland. Some smaller K-pop music agencies are set to receive government aid to help with global expansion. The Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism said Tuesday that it's launching a new support program to help small and mid-sized K-pop music agencies expand overseas. 10 smaller entertainment agencies will be selected each year, with each receiving annual support worth around $200,000 for up to 3 years. The first beneficiaries of the support are K-pop groups Risen, Psychers, Tunex, Kira's, Can't Be Blue, A2 Major, AT2 Major, Big Ocean, U-Sphere, EXIN, and A-Turn. Each agency can choose how the grants are spent as long as the funds are used for overseas expansion. The South Korean national football team has completed its first full squad training session since arriving in Guadalajara, Mexico. Led by head coach Hong Myung-bo, South Korea trained on Monday, 3 days ahead of its second Group A match at the 2026 FIFA World Cup against Mexico. Midfielder Bae Jun-ho and defender Kim Tae-hyun, both recovering from injuries, rejoined team training, allowing all 26 players to take part in a full session together for the first time since the squad arrived in Mexico. Bae has suffered an ankle injury during a friendly against Trinidad and Tobago in May, while Kim injured ligaments in his left ankle during training 2 days before Korea's victory over Czechia. The world was stunned in 2016 when Google's AlphaGo defeated Isidore, one of the world's top Go players, in a historic match that signaled a major breakthrough in artificial intelligence. 10 years on, 2 of South Korea's greatest Go players are reflecting on what AI means for the future of humanity and competition. They both stress that human judgment matters more than ever. Our Kim So-young has the details.
Go Grandmaster Lee Chang-ho and Lee Se-dul, two legends who defined Korean Go, took to the stage for a discussion on what humans can still do in the age of artificial intelligence. Lee Se-dul, who faced AlphaGo in a historic match nearly 10 years ago and now teaches at Ulsan National Institute of Science and Technology, said the key is not simply using AI, but knowing how to work with it.
Using AI is very easy, but making good use of it is not as easy as it sounds. So I think we need to learn how to truly work with it.
The two also reflected on how AlphaGo transformed professional Go and how that shift is pushing people in other fields to rethink what they once took for granted. They said future generations will need skills such as creativity, persistence, and the ability to ask better questions. Rather than simply memorizing answers quickly, they emphasized the importance of forming questions worth asking and staying deeply engaged with them.
I think students should keep their curiosity alive and continue exploring what they don't understand. And when they really need help, they can turn to AI for guidance.
Go was one of the first fields to feel the impact of AI. And now, two of the Go's greatest figures are reminding us that even in the AI-driven world, human judgment, curiosity, and creativity still have a role that cannot be replaced. Kim So-young, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. Russia launched its largest drone and missile barrage of the war overnight on Monday, killing 11 people and setting fire to the roof of an 11th century monastery in Kyiv that UNESCO calls one of Eastern Orthodox Christianity's most sacred landmarks. More than 680 drones and missiles targeted Kyiv and the cities of Kharkiv and Dnipro hours after President Zelenskyy and Vladimir Putin separately spoke by phone with President Trump. Ukraine's air defenses intercepted 632 aerial targets. 5 people were killed in Kyiv, including in strikes on apartment buildings and the market. The Kyiv-Pechersk Lavra, also known as the Monastery of the Caves, suffered significant damage. Zelenskyy called it Russia's, quote, biggest crime yet against Christian culture, and urged G7 leaders meeting in France to deliver a decisive response. In the U.S., 8 crew members have been killed in a crash involving an Air Force B-52 Stratofortress bomber shortly after takeoff from Edwards Air Force Base in Southern California's Mojave Desert on Monday. The 8-engine bomber went down at 11:20 in the morning while on a test mission roughly 100 miles north of Los Angeles. Officials at the airbase said the crash was, quote, not survivable and that emergency crews had been sent to the scene to account for all personnel. Aerial footage of the crash site showed a charred area roughly the size of a football field. The incident is the first crash of the nuclear-capable B-52 aircraft since 2016. In the UK, children under 16 will be banned from accessing social media platforms, including TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, Facebook, and X from spring 2027. Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced the move on Monday in one of the most sweeping restrictions on children's internet use by any major democracy. The government said legislation would pass before Christmas, with the ban taking effect early next year. Age verification will be required for over 16s wishing to continue using the platforms. U.S. President Donald Trump hosted the first professional sporting event ever held at the White House on Sunday as part of the nation's 250th anniversary. The 7-fight UFC card on the South Lawn came hours after Trump announced a peace agreement with Iran. 4,000 guests watched the fights, including military personnel, corporate sponsors, and political allies, but tickets were not sold to the public. Underdog Justin Gaethje defeated Ilia Topuria to claim the UFC lightweight championship in the main event. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
Yesterday, many regions, including here in Seoul, saw their highest temperatures of the year so far. The heat continues to build across Korea, and Seoul could see a new record this afternoon. And strong sunshine will add to the heat today. UV levels are expected to reach very high in many parts of Korea this afternoon. So if you're heading outdoors, be sure to protect yourself from the sun with a hat, umbrella, and sunglasses. Then there is a chance of passing rain in Gyeonggi-do province and mountainous areas of Gangwon-do and Jeollado provinces with 5 to 20 millimeters in the forecast. Lastly, checking on today's highs, Seoul will be getting up to 33 degrees Celsius. Daejeon and Gwangju both will be topping out at 32 degrees. The heat will remain firmly in place through the week, so take extra precautions against heat-related illnesses and stay hydrated.
That's all we have for today's noon edition of Arirang News. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Stay tuned.